Benjamin Netanyahu could be detained if he visits Britain after Starmer backed the International Criminal Court's decision to issue an arrest warrant. The Hague-based court, which Foreign Secretary David Lammy last month said the UK supports his, today issued warrants for Netanyahu and his former Defence Minister Yoav Gallant, as well as the leader of Hamas. Britain, along with 123 other members of the ICC, will now be obliged to detain Netanyahu on site under international law. A spokesperson for Downing Street said the government respected the court and refused to rule out he would be arrested if he landed on British soil, comments which have been widely interpreted as supportive of the decision. He said, "We respect the independence of the ICCA." Norton added there was no immoral equivalence between the democratically elected leader of Israel and terrorist leaders, and that Israel has a right to defend itself. The ICCC warrant would, nevertheless, need to be ratified by a UK court before it becomes valid. It is understood. Last month, Mr. Lammy told MPs Labour continues to support the IC. Adding, both the IC and the IJ should be able to go about their work unfettered by political intervention. And Attorney General Lord Hermer used a newspaper interview to say the government would not do anything that undermines the work of the ICA and would comply with our lawful obligations. Shadow Foreign Secretary Dame Priti Patel said, "The warrant was deeply concerning and provocative," adding, "A Labour government must condemn and challenge the ICC's decision." The warrants against Netanyahu and his former defense minister Yoav Gallant focus on allegations Israel has used food as a weapon in its campaign against Hamas in Gaza, a charge Israeli officials deny. Experts have warned that hunger has become widespread across Gaza and may have reached famine levels in the north of the territory, which is under siege by Israeli troops. The action by the International Criminal Court came as the death toll from Israel's campaign in Gaza passed 44,000 people, according to local health authorities, who say more than half of those killed were women and children. Their count does not differentiate between civilians and combatants. Netanyahu condemned the arrest warrant against him, saying Israel rejects with disgust the absurd and false actions by the court. In a statement released by his office, he said, "There is nothing more just than the war that Israel has been waging in Gaza. The decision turns Netanyahu and the others into internationally wanted suspects and could further isolate them, as well as complicate efforts to negotiate a ceasefire. But its practical implications could be limited since Israel and its major ally, the United States, are not members of the court. We are not going to get into hypotheticals. We remain focused on pushing for an immediate ceasefire to bring an end to the devastating violence," the Prime Minister's official spokesman said when asked if the UK would obey the warrant. "A domestic legal process needs to be carried out through the UK courts, which determines whether or not to endorse the arrest warrant through the UK's International Criminal Court Act 2001. The spokesman added, respect the independence of the International Criminal Court, which is the primary international institution for investigating and prosecuting the most serious crimes of international concern. This government has been clear that Israel has a right to defend itself in accordance with international law. There is no moral equivalent between Israel, a democracy, and Hamas and Lebanese Hezbollah, which are terrorist organizations. As well, we remain focused on pushing for an immediate ceasefire to bring an end to the devastating violence in Gaza, which is essential to protect civilians, ensure the release of hostages, and to increase humanitarian aid into Gaza." Sir Keir is also facing pressure to support the warrant from Labour and former Labour left-wingers. El Ribeiro Addy, the Labour MP for Clapham and Brixton Hill, said the warrant was an important development, which comes far too late for the 44,000 already killed in Gaza. "If international law means anything, and if there's any hope of stopping future atrocities against civilian populations, these men must be brought to justice," she added. "The UK government must take note, comply with the ICC, and end our country's complicity in it." Richard Bergen, the Socialist Campaign Group secretary who lost the Labour whip earlier this year for rebelling in a vote over benefits, added, "I welcome the arrest warrants against Israeli PM Netanyahu, his former defense minister. Their barbaric crimes are clear for all to see. Our government must commit to enforcing these arrest warrants. And governments must now impose sanctions on Israel to stop more war crimes.
Issues, operational issues, and our ability to carry out our mandates, including vital matters of security. So contacts can be had, they need to be limited, and there is also a procedure through which we advise in writing the office of the ICC that these contacts are had.